Okay, I'd like to introduce Mark, and we're great buddies, and we chat a lot. And Mark and I have a podcast. Dean and I have a podcast. Mike Koenigs and I have a podcast. Joe Polish and I have a podcast. Is there anyone else in the room? Yeah, Shannon Waller, I have a podcast. Gord Vickman, I have a podcast. So, yeah. Yeah. We're going to talk anyway. Why don't we record it and send it out? Anyway, so Mark and I have a podcast called American Happiness. Okay, and we kind of share a lot of interests in marketing, health, and everything else. But Mark is, and we're kind of similar backgrounds. We grew up about 90 miles. I grew up in Northern Ohio. He grew up in Detroit. Blue collar, we're both blue collar. Mark was a beat cop for 7 years in Detroit.
Mhm.
7, he did a beat cop, and he's done lots of other things. And but he runs an incredibly successful advertising agency. And but he told me something about, what was it, about 2 months ago? You told me about this. It just blew my mind. And watch what he demonstrates when he talks about his collaboration and with things that people earlier in the day have said. Just keep note of things that have already been talked about. So over to you, Mark.
Well, I'll jump to the first slide here, and basically we talk about what's the free zone. I got into free zone, and it was always, and I struggled with the idea of a free zone because I live in a world of advertising, which is just about being competitive. And Dan would always talk about, well, you need to have an environment where you're not competing anymore, where you need to have this monopoly by yourself. And like you understand that, Dan, how do you get a monopoly in the advertising business? But all that being said, I've been here for quite a few years, and I've been trying to adapt to the wisdom of Dan Sullivan. And one of the first things that happened to me when I got here was I learned the concept of free days. And free days was something I didn't do when I first came to coach. And it was this whole idea of, geez, I'm supposed to have these 24-hour blocks of time that I don't deal with business. And I haven't done that since I was 12 years old, and I'm not quite sure how that's going to work out. Well, I've always had a passion for automobiles, and the idea of free days got me finally thinking, okay, I'm going to go get into auto racing. Now, like most of you,
This is that age.
what's what's
When was it?
I started racing. I started doing track days about 6, 7 years ago, and I've been racing seriously for 4 years. Um, so I decided I was going to get into racing. I decided to get into racing at an age when most of the other guys have retired for
Or
20
are
years
dead.
already. What's that?
Or are dead.
Or are dead. Uh, so anyways, now like most of you, I can't get into racing at a rational level. I can't just like, let's get a sports car and go out to the track. I now have a bus, 2 trailers, a truck, a pit crew, and 5 race cars. Because it's now like all of you, it's if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have to be really good at it. So turned into getting into racing. I will share this. I literally got a letter from the Guinness Book of Record on Thursday. I actually have it in my briefcase. The Guinness Book of Record has just approved me and authorized me that I will now become the oldest rookie professional race car driver in the history of the world. So I will be breaking that particular record in August of this year. And it's going to take somebody 66 years and 90 days to catch me. Oddly enough, it was held by a guy named Dick Trickle, which is like, that sounds like a disease state. I'm not picking on the guy. It's just like, that sounds painful. So step 2, following the Dan wisdom, the Dan Sullivan wisdom, was I remember Dan saying, you need to identify people in big corporations who have entrepreneurial mindset. That these people exist, and Dan's example of them are these are people who treat their career like a business, and people who think like that. Now, in this particular photo right there, that is My race partner, he and I actually own the race team together. Coincidentally, he happens to be the guy who is in charge of all Kroger Health. He is the top guy in Kroger Pharmacy. And we didn't become partners racing because I identified that he was at Kroger. We became partners racing because we literally pitted next to each other every weekend at the track and became friends and decided that we had a lot of values and wanted to build an endurance team because endurance racing is the type of racing that we do. So step 3 became, who do you want to be a hero to, and looking for opportunities. So as I became friends with Doug Cornelius at Kroger, we would go to dinner, we would hang out a lot together, and he started asking me questions about things at Kroger. And he said, we're trying to accomplish this, and we've come up with this idea that we want to make food as medicine. And he's explaining to me how Kroger, under his direction, is now going to embark on reducing, and each Kroger has a pharmacy. They want to reduce the amount of prescription drugs that Kroger customers buy by 40%. And I was really intrigued by this because I'm like, okay, here's a major retailer who says we want to sell less of our products to someone. And their whole idea is, the premise that they are working from is that America is looking at drugs as their source of health, that they think pharmaceuticals are the source of health. And what Kroger wants them to do is they want them to think of pharmaceuticals as an adjunct to healthy living, that buying the right food and doing the right things and taking care of yourself. And these were the frustrations that Doug would share with me. And I would start saying, well, have you looked at this? Have you thought about this? Could you get people to change, in this fashion and that fashion? Ultimately, that concluded with him coming back to me one day and saying, look, I don't have anybody in my organization that can do what you can do, and I'm never going to have anybody in my organization that can do what you can do. So we need to figure out how you can do what you can do, because we are, and his exact words were, because we suck at this. So the next thing we did is I took a tour of Doug's stores, Kroger stores. There's 2,250 of them. There's about to be 4,000 because they're buying Albertsons right now. And I noticed this machine sitting in a corner. That's called a Higgy machine. And a Higgy machine, these things have been around since I was a kid going to a grocery store, and you put your arm in it and it takes your blood pressure. Well, it ends up, Kroger has been paying the Higgy company to keep these machines in their store. So they literally pay for it. Then Higgy actually collects your data on that screen when you get your blood pressure done, and they sell your data back to Kroger. So I'm looking at this, I'm saying, Doug, you guys are paying people to use floor space here? And he's like, yeah, we're really stupid, aren't we? So it ends up that the contract for that was just about to be renewed. So Doug decided, I'm going to throw all 2,250 Higgy machines out of the store. And his comment to me was, what could you do with that same square footage that would improve the lives of my consumers and make my store money? So we went and we put together a partnership. This was who, not how. We went and made a partnership with a company called Brick Tattoo and a company called Ricoh. You're probably familiar with Ricoh. They're the copier people and the photography people. And Brick Tattoo is a company who is in the business of signage inside and outside Kroger stores. So they're a contractor who does this stuff. Ricoh is a company who is in the technology business and provides technology inside Kroger. We built a new organization with them, and we created a company called PharmaVision. Now, what PharmaVision is doing, quite honestly, in fact, I'm going to back up for a minute. PharmaVision is, we took over that space along with a lot of other space inside Kroger. So now when you go to a Kroger store, instead of that Higgy machine, you will see, let me see if I can find it here. Nope, it's not there. There should have been a photo there. You will find that there's going to be a television set with a big planogram unit. And this planogram unit holds product. So what they figured at Kroger was, one, we've got this space that we're losing money on. Two, the second thing they figured out is we're not good, this is Doug speaking, we're not good at sourcing and bringing innovative new items into Kroger. He says, everything we have in the store is old, it's outdated, we're not good at it. They actually fired the employee who was in charge of bringing in new products, handed that all over to us. Our job is to now bring new products into Kroger, put them in this planogram system. We also have a 24-foot planogram that they gave us. We also have all of the shelving and all the window spacing and everything that's in Kroger. And then we create television commercials that go on the TV screen. So you're standing in line at the pharmacy, you're waiting for your prescriptions, there's a TV there, there's nothing else to do but watch the stupid TV. The TV runs commercials on new products. That new product is sitting right underneath the television where you can pick it up and put it on the cash register and buy it. Now, one of the things that this was important is Dan keeps saying about having this free zone. How do we get this free zone that no one can compete with us? We as an agency at this point, and literally, we now have built an agency where our competitor agencies now are coming to us, which Dan always said. How do you build your company to a point where your competitors will come to you? Well, now the ad agency for Pfizer, for GSK, for AbbVie, for NASCAR, those agencies are all coming to us and say, okay, we need to do business with you because you control all the messaging inside a major retailer, and we don't. So we have become the only ad agency in the world at this point that literally can take a product, a brand new product that somebody just invented, and in 30 days, we can have it on a shelf in 2,250 stores with an ad, with a vendor number, with an IRI report. That means you're having national reports on your sales, which opens the doors to all the other retailers. So it has completely changed the way that we do business, but it's also changed, the way that they do business. And essentially what it amounts to is, as Dan has said in the past, he's looking for slow learners with a lot of money. Committed slow workers with a lot of money. It probably took me 6 or 7 years to figure out, okay, how do I take an ad agency and make an ad agency that other ad agencies want to do business with? And how do I get that free zone? But at this point, we now have a free zone. Now I'll add one other thing to this, and that is we've now done some additional research and we have located 10,000 other Higgy machines in America. And we don't know the Higgy people. We have no axe to grind with the Higgy people.
But they are doing your market research.
But they have done the market research. And what Higgy has done, and again, this gets back to a Dan principle, and that is Higgy basically is Blockbuster in a Netflix world. And they are a company who have made money for 50 years. They're owned by a private equity firm, we understand, and they're just a cash cow. And they've made money for 50 years. Except what occurred to me when I was meeting at the store and I was walking around it with Doug Cornelius was, I've not seen one person ever use that machine. And Doug said, nobody uses the machine now because we sell blood pressure devices you can put on your wrist for $20. Why would anybody go to the trouble of going to the store to do all this when you can do it at home? So Higgy's never updated their model. So we didn't set out to destroy somebody else's model. We weren't trying to be a disruptor. What we were trying to do, getting back to something Dan has said, is find a better way to do something. Mm-hmm. And in this case, what we set out to do was find a better way to use a couple of dozen square feet of space that is prime real estate. In a retail store, a piece of real estate that is located in front of a cash register is the most expensive piece of real estate inside that retail store. When you go to any store, Kroger, Walmart, Walgreens, when you see end caps of product, when you see products that are next to the cash register, know that that company paid a significant amount of money to be located there. That didn't just happen. That company's paying a lot of money to be in that location. When you look at an end cap, you go to Target and you see an end cap and it's got all shampoo, a particular brand of shampoo. That company spent $200,000 to be on that end cap for 30 days at Target. That's how valuable that real estate is. So You can imagine how valuable this particular piece of real estate is. And of course, we turned it into a profit center for Kroger because Kroger will share in the television revenue. Kroger now gets to push all their pharmaceutical companies into it. So we're running pharmacy, we're running the pharmaceuticals as well as the retail products. And Kroger gets new innovative products that they make money on. I'll leave you this last thing. When we were putting this together, I asked Doug, I'm like, so what's the benchmark that you're looking for? When you say you want us to bring you innovation, what's the benchmark? He says, well, if you could bring us 2 innovative products a year, we're going to call that a success. And I'm looking at him like, 2?
No, I would say, well, we'll do our best. No, yeah, when the going gets tough, the tough have to get going.
So we have already had 2 successful products at Kroger that happened in our first 10 days. In our first 10 days, the first product we brought in was Wax RX, which if any of you have seen me do a TV commercial for an ear cleaning product, that is the product. We put that in there, and in 10 days, Kroger figured out that that was a $5.1 million SKU. The second product we brought in, believe it or not, was a pasta sauce. And yes, I figured out how to make pasta into a pharmacy product, but that's another story. And
health is health.
it was, and it's the only pasta sauce that is Whole30 certified. That's how I made it work. And the pasta sauce turned into a hit in like 10 days time. So we've already surpassed their goals, and we haven't even, weren't even our first month into it. We actually anticipate we'll probably bring 15 to 2 dozen successful SKUs through their store.
And talk about the big pharmaceutical company whose name shall not be mentioned here, who've already approached you.
Actually, GSK has already come to us and said we want to put our shingles vaccine on it, which I'm very torn about because it's like I hate vaccines, but I love money. This was tough. And then
You're an AI program. You have no judgment.
I'm like, vaccines, 200 grand a month. Vaccines, 200 grand a month. And then Pfizer came to us, and we sell this in 60-day blocks. So you get 2 30-day blocks on the TV. Ran into Pfizer, and Pfizer said, yeah, we'll do that. We'll do it. I'm like, well, what 2 months do you want? He says, we'll just take them all. I'm like, mean what? We'll every month. We'll just take every month. And I'm like, it's $200,000 a month. And the woman from Pfizer goes, yeah, that's just discretionary money. She goes, we don't even have to go for approval for something like that. And I'm like, did I say per month? Because that was per week. Yes, I realized, that was too cheap when I said that. But yeah, the drug companies are all diving into the TV model. So anyways, that's kind of the program. That's pretty much what it is.
I have a pricing principle, how you price yourself, because pricing is the first step of being a capitalist or especially being an entrepreneur. Is you have to know how to price yourself in the marketplace. And so I have a formula. It's called Sullivan's pricing formula. And what it is that the price really scares you, plus 20%. Because of the 2 people, and you haven't told the person, there's only one person really scared of the price, and that's you. The other person says, oh, great. And the 20% keeps you from kicking yourself afterwards. But the other thing is that you now have a pricing model because of somebody has out of discretion. That's a new concept, discretionary budget.
Yeah, that's for the pharmacy people. This is just discretionary
Pocket
money.
change.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to go through the ad budget. It's just discretionary. The other thing it's done for the agency, it has now made it where Kroger is now sending, as people contact Kroger all the time, we'd like to sell our product in Kroger. Kroger is now saying, well, go talk to these people. So now the lead flow of new products, we already had a good lead flow to products, but now the flow of new products coming through the agency is getting bigger because Kroger's now telling people, well, we don't handle that anymore. It goes over here to this agency and call them and they'll make a decision. And what Doug has really done is his comment to me was, I want you to bring products into our store that are innovative, that will improve the health of our consumers, and in many cases, try to change their behavior and get them off the couch and get them off of pharmaceuticals. He says, as long as you do those things, I don't care what you bring in the store. That's your benchmark, and that's what we're working against. Somebody had a question, I just saw.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I'm Genevieve Boss, Leor's business partner. I'm looking at your interesting deal that you set up. If you could just back up on PharmaVision, where you partnered with Brick Tattoo and Jekyll Hyde. Would you mind giving us a little bit of the tactical backstage, what you're comfortable with? Like, how did you decide who owns what, who does what? What's the split, if you don't mind asking, or how did you value the split and where did you end up? And then why did you choose them? I mean, you talked
Okay,
about
one
Brick
at a
already
time.
being
You've
part of the
done
deal.
all of them. Do one at a time, and we'll give you time
Yeah,
for all the others.
that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, an easy way to explain is Brick Tattoo already had an infrastructure of people going into stores. So they had the ability to have people go to all these different stores every month. What Brick Tattoo didn't have, they didn't have my cash confidence. And this took many millions of dollars because we had to build all these tools and buy 2,200 televisions and do all of those things. So Brick Tattoo had a capability that I didn't have. I had a capability that they didn't have, which was the cash confidence. So needless to say, he with the gold, golden rule, he with the gold makes the rules. So our company owns the majority of PharmaVision, and his company is the junior partner in it. But he's absolutely thrilled about it because he's now a part of something that is infinitely bigger than his existing company. I mean, it dwarfs his existing company, what we're doing.
Hmm.
Mark, do you see this as do you have any kind of limits in the Kroger relationship so you're not allowed to have equity in products that you feature in? And if not, do you see this as a platform to actually just bring in startups and bring in, new products and innovation through that distribution channel?
Well, the beauty of that is, first off, we do not have a non-compete agreement with Kroger. So we can take this concept and we can go chase those other 10,000 Higgy machines, which we've already identified that 1,975 of them are in Rite Aid and 1,300 of them are in Publix. And we're going to start there because I know people in all these retail stores. Um, as far as products, no, I can bring products in that I own. One of the products that we're putting on a display in the next 30 to 60 days, with Scott is a part of here, is the Happy device that you've seen that's around the neck. We're actually taking Happy and we're
You
putting
haven't
Happy,
seen the pad that you sleep on. It's terrific.
and that's the one we're putting in the store, the
Yeah.
Happy Sleep Pad. And on top of this fixture, we're building this big acrylic display case, and it has a fake Happy pad in it, and it's an entire sleep thing that people can come in and they can now at the pharmacy learn about buying a device that'll help them sleep instead of buying Ambien from the pharmacist. And we have created another thing. We have another tool that we have, which is called Fresh Start. And Fresh Start is an app now that every pharmacist and every pharmacy tech at Kroger has. And before we put a product on the shelf, we create a 60-second video for Fresh Start. So the pharmacist and everybody in the pharmacy gets trained on the product before the product hits the store. And then we have the ability to sample products to the pharmacists and to the pharmacy techs. So we have a very complete training program for Keep It Up. But back to your question, no, there's products going in there right now that I have investments in, and I have investment in Happy, in fact, and it's fine. There's no problem with it.
Hmm. Next, do you have any other questions? Did that satisfy? Yeah. Just thing. Richard, what do you think about this? Funny, just as you thought about something to say, I
Yeah.
spotted you, and
Well, I'm just amazed that you can bend these vast bureaucracies to your will.
no, it's not. It's one person.
Well, not at Pfizer, right? I mean,
Pfizer, we're not having to bend anybody to our will because in Pfizer, there's two things happening in Pfizer. One, the head of all pharmacy at Kroger called Pfizer and said, we'd like you to talk to our guys at PharmaVision about being in our program. if you're at Pfizer, do you want to tick off the guy who represents 3% of your annual sales? The second thing is, if you're selling, if you're GSK and you're selling a shingles vaccine, and the pharmacist does the injection right there at the store, do you not want to have a sign in front of the pharmacy that says, get your shingles vaccine today? And the pharmacist will do it while you're waiting. I mean, it's kind of a good point of purchase ad display. So I mean, they're getting a value. They're not. We don't need to manipulate them because they're getting a great value because of the TVs.
Oh, I'm sure of it. It's just I'm amazed it doesn't have to go through compliance. It doesn't have to go through legal. It doesn't have to be approved at a higher level in Pfizer. I mean, when I think of the Happy product, the liability they have on this, the based on representations that are made, I would think that would be months of evaluation, clearance. I mean, they're exposed.
So let me tell you a little dark secret about retail. I've been in retail for a long, long time. And when you see a product at Kroger or Walmart or Walgreens or CVS, whatever the case is, understand that no one in that retail company has ever validated one thing that's written on that package. And I know that sounds crazy, but it doesn't happen. The onus of being within FTC and FDA guidelines on retail products is on the manufacturer. It's not on the retailer. The retailer accepts what you're saying at face value. And the way you get kicked off is if you get violated or you get fined or the FTC pulls your product, then you can get kicked off if you have consumers that are unhappy. But none of the retailers do anything to validate the claims that are on any product in their store.
Well, thank you. I'm amazed, and
It's dumbfounding, isn't it?
I just feel like I have gotten a whole new level of education here.
Yeah. A lot of you have been in free zone for a long time. What boxes of free zone characteristics has Mark clicked off here? You know, in terms of what he's doing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Steve, is Steve here? Where's Steve? Yeah, Steve. We have there's another podcast.
Me, Steve?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry.
I was just hiding back here in the 8th row.
Steve crying. Yeah. So we have a podcast series. So anyway, so Steve, we interview people on free zones. What from your, just you don't have to hit them all, but what immediately comes forward to you about how he's created this win-win-win-win monopoly?
Well, first of all, calmly and with a real focus on his unique ability and a problem that clearly, I go back to what that guy said to you in that first thing about just wanting to reduce the number of people buying prescriptions from the pharmacy and that they wanted to make food medicine. So I feel like you solved a problem, but you did it calmly and not like as a organization, but as a person.
Yeah.
And I think there was an element of you feeling like, or at least you providing confidence to him and them that you were the person to do the job because you were both going to be in unique ability. So two organizations and people in their unique ability working together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was really about finding that guy inside a major corporation who thought like an entrepreneur.
He found you.
Yeah, pretty
Because
much.
you both enjoyed racing. Yeah. A relationship, free time. So if you're tightly scheduled, you can never transform yourself. You can never transform because there's no time for you to think about doing things anyway, except you're already doing it. So the first thing we go after in strategic coach is how long are you going to live? So our first question, just write down at what age you're going to die. And then we say, so somebody says 85, and we say, okay, we're going to talk about when you're 84, how are you physically? And I can tell you the answers. I've done this on we have done it on 22,000 entrepreneurs. And the answer is always the same. Physically, great shape. Mentally, really sharp. Financially, no problems. Relationship, great relationships. Your assessment of your life up until now, really good. I says, good. Then I repeat back to them. Physically, great shape. Mentally, great shape. Financially, great shape. Relationship, great shape. And the life you've lived, great shape. So what do you think the odds are you're going to die the next year? And I said, oh, no. So I said, how much longer would you live? And they said, 20, 25. I said, which, 20 or 25? And they say, 25. And I said, you've been here in a half hour, and I just bought you 25 years. Now let's talk about why you don't have to pack in everything before 84 or 85. And you give yourself now a lot of free time. So let's go after the free time. And I will tell you this right now, if you take like 100 days off a year, you'll double your income automatically. Just automatically, if you take 100 days off, you'll double your income. First of all, you'll be away and your staff will actually get something done. And the other thing is, um, um, your your spouse will have you back, your children will have you back, and there won't be this competition between your personal life and your business life. You'll handle. There's no more competition there, and you'll notice that about 80% of what you're doing, somebody else can do better than you can. So that'll free you up right off the bat. But the reason why, Mark, you were a workaholic just like
Oh, absolutely.
you were a Toco workaholic before you came in. And now how many days working on racing, think about, and that's not the only free time you have, but the racing, how many days a year would you say?
Racing takes up 50 days a year, 60 days a year.
Yeah.
And
He
so, I mean,
didn't.
it eats up a lot of days.
Now, how long before you started racing had you thought about racing?
I used to drag race when I was 16 years
Yeah,
old.
so 16.
So it's something I'd wanted to do, but I wouldn't take time to do it. And Dan's right. One, had it not been for free days, none of this would have taken place. Had it not been for my view that I'm going to live to be 120, I also wouldn't have taken this, because who starts a racing career at 63 years old when I decided to start racing? And I just opened up another company at 65, which is, as some of you know, my contemporaries are all saying, what's wrong with you? You should be retiring right now, not starting more companies.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Mike Wandler, Mike is right up here right up front, Eleanor. Um,
Yeah, I think something that you said a while back kind of ties into this, and that is, everything is made up and no one's in charge. And I find myself doing that. That's one of my successes is I don't know who's going to stop me. Let's try it and see who's going
yeah.
to stop me. Same with this stuff I'm running after now. I think there's a lot of people in the way, but they haven't stood in front of me yet. So keep going.
Yeah, well, other people are too busy to take time out to oppose you.
Exactly, exactly. And they want this stuff to happen anyway. They want, food is medicine. That's a wonderful thing.
What you'll realize, and most of you probably already realize this, we're entrepreneurs. These are big corporations. I mean, Kroger, the pharmacy alone has 40,000 employees, not just counting Kroger, the food company. Being enormous doesn't mean you have this great collection of really bright people. Right. It just means you have a lot of people. They're, in fact, and I love people over at Kroger, but you work really hard to find the really smart people. And when you do, they rise to the top.
Mm-hmm.
Guys like Doug Cornelius, who obviously he is a pharmacist. This is a guy who was a pharmacist in a Kroger store 25 years ago, who by nothing more than being a pharmacist is now running the place, because people in the Kroger company have identified just his capacity and his intelligence to, keep lifting him up in the company.
Mm-hmm.
But he looks at the business different.
Yeah. One of the things we've discovered about this collaboration between entrepreneurs, the person has to be way up. They have to be way up. They have to have discretionary decision making, and they have to have discretionary budget, and their continuation in their role is based totally on performance. Totally on performance. Now, here's the thing. I bet Doug doesn't tell a lot of people in Kroger about the relationship with you.
No.
I bet nobody else in Kroger knows about his relationship with, and the reason is his career is his business, and he doesn't want, there's no competition as vicious as the top of a big bureaucracy. That's the most vicious competition in the world. Okay, so he's an ace in Doug's collection. I mean, he's got this. He says, I don't know where Doug's coming up with these ideas. Oh, I've been around a while. I've seen things and everything like that. Yeah, luck. You never discount luck. I'm really, really lucky, and I've just, I'm reading the news and everything like that. All fiction, not a word of truth about it. And that's his cover story. That's his cover story for this ace that he has that he races cars with. A lot of people probably don't know about his car racing.
Some people know about it, but he doesn't. He keeps it down kind of low. Kroger has 2 racing programs, 2 NASCARs. So there's a Kroger Health NASCAR and a Kroger Grocery NASCAR. Doug has actually become the head of Kroger Racing also. So which makes sense
Oh
because
yeah.
he's the race car driver. So because he's now running the Kroger NASCAR program on the drug side, kind of people know he's a driver. But the fact that he and I own a team together and stuff like that, that's not a relevant piece of
Yeah.
information.
Yeah. Now NASCAR and drugs go together. I'm trying to think about the. I'm trying to think about it. Yeah, but he's a visionary himself. I mean, he's got, he's obviously a unique individual.
Yeah,
But it's never with the organization. If you think you're going to have a relationship, you don't have a relationship with the organization. You have a relationship. Mike, I'm sure that you've discovered this because you're dealing with huge corporations. What's your take on what he said? And first of all, did you get anything from? Because you're right in a unique position. You're right at the start of something huge. He's doing SMRs, which are the small nuclear reactors, and this is going to be huge. This is going to be huge, nukes.
Yeah, and there's no bigger bureaucracy than reactors and selling nuclear energy. There's a massive bureaucracy, and then I'm working with BWXT, which these are guys that have built 420 reactors, put them all in there. Every Navy reactor is there, and they deal with all of that. So you would think that would be a incredibly bureaucratic company and really locked down by the government and by the Navy. And I found the guy in there, Josh, and he's got 5 people around him, and they're the skunk works of BWXT that are going to commercialize that. And they're exactly, our kind of thinking.
Yeah.
And they have to be in order to compete in this industry. So they're there. And then I've also found within the government, there's some like-minded people that want to change the world and change energy, green energy with nuclear. So those are the people, and we're finding each other very quick. And then to your other point, there is 99% of other people that are just there to kill it, buzz kills or tell you 100 reasons you can't do it. And we're just grouping up and saying, let's ignore that and let's go. Let's make this happen.
Yeah.
And it's all about the who's
Yeah.
for sure. And it's powerful. And then the other bureaucratic people are trying to drag you back into, no, it's about the organization. And then I have to remind them, no, it's not. It's about the people that are going to get it done.
And you're right about that. When in the case of Doug Cornelius, so he has a reputation in the company that if you get hired into his team, if you move to his team, in 2 years you will either get promoted or fired. That is his reputation. So lazy people try to avoid ever getting drafted into his group, and people who are ambitious try to get into his group. So it tends to make his group of people around him very loyal. So all of this is happening from one guy who has about 5 people around him.
Very small groups.
Right. This little group of about 5 people that are in his little circle who go and they're his good soldiers, and they forget corporate, forget what they said, go do this and go make that happen.
And that's always happening, and it's always a few people that make it happen.
Yep.
And a ton of people standing in the
Yeah.
way.
The
And you don't
thing
have to
I-
let them stand in the way.
The thing I like about it, the Higgy people, that you said that was a loss for, the space was a loss for for Kroger. They were actually paying somebody to give them a loss.
Yes.
And I said, Boy, that's a cool trick where you get paid to create a loss for somebody. I mean, it's
Well, here's how it happens.
yeah,
Kroger has this thing, and Doug explained it to me. He said, if anything, he says, when anything happens at Kroger, there is very much a policy, if it's not broken, leave it alone.
yeah,
So he says that contract's been there for decades. He said every year, well, just, yeah, okay, renew the contract, because it's not broken. So whatever the case is. And he says, then you guys walked in and said, this seems stupid. And he was like, oh, yeah, I guess the contract's broken. So
yeah,
let's get rid of it.
yeah. Brian Brian Kurtz, this is your first free zone, but Brian is met Brian through Joe Polish, but Brian is a really phenomenally good marketer. But Brian, your take on just hearing Mark's story of the kind of collaborations that he's created. Because
Yeah,
this is a really multifaceted collaboration. I
Really
mean, it goes out in all directions. Everybody wants to be part of this thing, including your competitors want to be part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
well, to connect it to the GPT conversation, AI would never have found the Higgy machines. I don't think, at least not seen the opportunity with the Higgy machines.
Yeah.
And I think what I'm really impressed with is Mark's. It's sort of like when John Carlton tells copywriters that you need you call it free time. He calls it, mindful time in nature. And John Carlton's not a soft, fuzzy guy. So when he talks about walking in nature, it's kind of weird. But he always said, you've got to be out there and always looking for opportunities. And when you have a mind like Mark's and you've got some free time, that's what, creates that kind of opportunity. I mean, he told me about it last night, so I had a preview, and getting all the details make me even more impressed with how Mark looks at the world, how he identifies the relationship. And the relationship was there driving cars before you ever thought about doing business with them. And that's the beauty of it, that, it's like you were contributing to this guy with no expectation of a return. And then you got like this incredible return because of the relationship. So it's the same. That's what marketing is all about.
It's about relationship.
It is. It's everything doesn't have to be a revenue event, but everything is a relationship event. And then the revenue is just going to happen because you have the relationship. And if it doesn't, okay, you'll find some other relationship that might give you some revenue, but it's not all about the revenue.
Well, he's got a model now. This model, what's it been start to finish? How long has it taken to get to where you are right now?
Started in November and we're now operating.
Yeah. So it's, but he now has a whole framework for looking at the world differently. Now he's going off and, he can, first of all, the reputation will go. First of all, he's not going to have to look for anybody for the rest of your career. Your next 54 years.
Yeah, and when this thing started, to your point, Doug and I were racing. We were in mid-Ohio, and Kroger's in Ohio, and it was the end of the race day, and he just said, he goes, let's go over to one of my stores. I just want to go to one of my stores and have you look at my pharmacy and tell me what you think. So we just walked around the pharmacy, and I'm like, God, this is a mess. And I'm like, this is stupid. Nobody's using that. And I'm like, and I picked up some product, and I picked this product up off the shelf, and I'm like, and this stuff's going to date code out in about 2 months. Who bought this stuff? And he's like, I don't know how to fix this. And that's how we got there.
Yeah. Cade?
Is that a concept, the TV and that kiosk? Is that something you had thought of previous, or did you just come up with that out of thin air when you went there?
Well, as an ad agency, we buy a lot of radio and television. So the idea of someday I want to own my own television network, I can't say wasn't a thought someplace in the back of my head. So it's like, I could own 4,000 televisions in a pharmacy. I'd basically own a television network. So that's essentially what was going through my mind. This is a freaking TV network.
Yeah.
So that's what we are. We're now an ad agency that actually owns their own television network.
Yeah. The interesting thing about it, his little 24 square feet, the sort of 24 square feet of shelf space, and that is by far will be the highest profit center in every Kroger store in the entire network. Okay. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's just the profits for this one. So he's got about 96. When the Albertson things come through, they'll have 4,000 stores times 24, times 24 square feet. It's about 100,000 square feet. This is the most valuable 100,000 square feet in 4,000 stores. And he's got the total monopoly on that 100,000 square feet.
Yeah, so we have like no one else, because when you get into retail's tough to get into, and you have to go to the big retailer, and you have to meet with the buyers, and then you have to get the buyer to agree, then you have to get, go through approval, then you have to get a vendor number and all this stuff, and it's a very difficult process. And in retail, shelves only reset once a year. So if the area we're in is, let's say, topical analgesics, and it resets in March, and if it's April, then you're a year away from talking, from being in that store. We now have the ability to take any consumer product and have it on, 2,500 store shelves in 30 days if they want to be on the shelf. But they have to have a product that warrants it. I will tell you that I'm very guarded and very protective, because a lot of people are bringing products to us, and I'm like, this doesn't make sense. This isn't good for Kroger. So we can't put this product on. I'm sorry, this one doesn't fit, because we're going to make sure that we bring as many winners into that store as we can.
Okay, one more, and we're going to take our final break, and then we're going to come up and we're going to start wrapping up for the day related to we've got somebody there, and Joe, of course, will get extra time.
Mark, just a quick question. Have you been able to measure yet a reduction in the drugs that they've been prescribing, or is that a year away or 2 years away?
That's kind of a new initiative. We've started a few things. So one of the things, another thing that Kroger done is Kroger has started an internal longevity program. So they've actually started in a longevity monthly Zoom meeting for middle management and above, which they've asked me to head up for them, which has given me a lot of exposure to a lot of other executives, and we're working on that. What we're trying to do is we're trying to help Kroger through the Kroger app come up with a smarter way to shop. So we're trying to fix it so that you can go to the app and you can say, oh, I'm going to buy all the green foods, because the greens are the healthy foods and the yellows are the, kind of questionable food, and the red stuff, that's the bad food. We're trying to show people how to make better food choices, which is really difficult. We live in a world where every piece of information in the world is in your pocket, and yet the lack of knowledge that individuals have on just how to have a healthy meal is dumbfounding with the lack of information. And it's not just people don't want to eat food, quality food. They literally don't know what to eat. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah. And I want to tell you, it's very controversial whether Oreos is a green food or a red food. My sense is dark chocolate Reese's cups are definitely green. There's a definitely.
And let me tell you something really quick. And this is on behalf of Doug and Kroger. Cargill came to them and offered to put $5 million into my program in advertising. And we sat with them and we said, what do you want to advertise? And what they wanted to advertise was unhealthy food. And Doug himself said, now you guys can keep your $5 million.
Yeah.
We don't need your money.
Yeah. I just wanted to comment on this diminishing prescription drugs by 40%. That is a phenomenal differentiating positioning statement for Kroger. Okay, and they own it by the fact that they're the first one to do it. They just own the space that we're trying to cut down on drug usage, and they would be the only. I mean, nobody else would come near that.
No, and I have all the records, by the way, of what pharmaceuticals sell now. And so some of the doctors in here might be interested. Top 3 pharmaceuticals that go through the Kroger pharmacy. Number 1 is Oxy, still today. Number 2 is Oxy. Number 3 is Oxy. They're just different doses. Those are the 3 biggest pharmaceuticals that sell in that pharmacy.
Well, that'd be true of any pharmaceutical.
It will be the same every place.
Yeah.
So don't believe everything you see when you see that we're trying to cut down the use of Oxy and we're trying to reduce this. those are still the biggest selling medications that are being sold in the country.
Yeah. Joe?
Well, I was just having this conversation with Dan about this. Things start out first as a movement, then they become a business,
And
then
then
they
they
become a
become a
racket.
racket. Yeah.
Yeah, and what you're doing is absolutely brilliant. I mean, like it's just super smart. And so I guess in the lines of reducing pharmaceuticals and everything, could I assist in maybe finding an alternative advertiser than Pfizer because that company is evil?
I haven't signed them yet, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
We have not signed them. I'm all for finding other advertisers. The issue that we have, I will tell you the issue I have. The issue I have is there are 600 pharmaceutical companies who supply product to the Kroger pharmacy. I have to play ball with Kroger because these are Kroger's suppliers. So I don't know if I'm in a position to literally tell Pfizer that they can't be on. However, if it was sold out, then time wouldn't be available.
Right.
Because we only allow 7 advertisers on the screen on any 60-day period. Because we don't want people, we're figuring about 3.5 minutes as a loop, 7 30-second spots. So if 7 spots are sold out, sorry Pfizer, there's no room for you in this 60-day period.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. Okay. Really good. First of all, let's have a big hand for. All right, we're going to take one last break for the day, and we're going to go to 5:30. But we're going to come back, and we're going to go back and start summing up in relationship to your purpose for the day. So we're going to take a look again at your purpose sheet for the day, and then we're going to do a simplified of the 3 things that you totally are takeaways for today that really correspond to the purpose of why you're here. And we'll do a simple triple play on that. And then we'll have people in your groups, last group breakout session, what you got today, where you started the day, and where you're ending up the day. And then we're just going to have a wrap up. Last year we had 60 here. We covered everybody, and it's 106, so we're not going to get. But I'd like to have some people talk who haven't talked so far today.